On today's podcast, this is a special podcast because I'm coming to you literally from inside the room at the Franklin Park Conservatory, their Wells Barn, an amazingly restored barn, old facility that is immaculate and such a cool, beautiful setting from this year's Thermostat Cultures Live event. That not only happened in person, but also virtually. And so I'm excited to share just some quick recap of today and the spirit and the message in the room, but also the experience. You're going to hear some sound bites from other people that had their experience, not only here in the room, but also all the people that joined us virtually. So enjoy this quick recap of Thermostat Cultures Live, and you're going to hear more about this in the coming months for sure.
Welcome back to The Thermostat with Jason Barger. If you're currently on a commute, a walk, or just a micro break in your day, glad you're making time to step back, to think, and to reflect on the next steps on your journey. I've never been more convinced. The best leaders and team cultures in the world are the ones that make time to step back and calibrate their thermostat. I hope today's conversation leaves you feeling grounded and inspired. Now let's dive into today's topic to engage our minds and hearts in order to authentically lead and create compelling cultures wherever we are in the world.
So with all that being said, let me stop talking, and why don't we hear from some of the people that were actually at the event, here live with us in person, and you're going to hear some sound bites from their words about their experience and at Thermostat Cultures Live this year. Why don't we hear from them?
I was so grateful to be connected to Jason. We share a lot of the same fundamental beliefs about how work can be a catalyst for change in society, like how work can be a place where humans thrive, right? So I think we all want to build those meaningful cultures. Both of us, Jason and I, share that drive and that purpose. And so when he asked me, I said yes right away. I couldn't wait. There's decades of research on human motivation or the science of human flourishing, and yet the organizations don't rely on that science or don't even look to the science, and they just do things the way they've always been done. So then when we get the opportunity to speak directly to leaders and share the latest science, the latest hows of, how to make meaningful change, how to create culture, and for the leaders to have the moment, like Jason says, to take a step back and be intentional about it. I mean, that's how you start. Change is hard. Like, people resist change, but you got to start somewhere. And I think places like this, conferences or unconferences like these, are a great place to spark the desire for change. I love seeing what resonates for people, what meant something, or people that come up to me and say, I always loved to turn meaningful work, but now I know how to do it as a leader. I knew it was important. I knew how it felt for me, but I didn't know how to create that for people, and that's meaningful for me because that's why I do what I do. And then the other side of it is to really be attuned to, what questions are people asking? What can I learn more about? Like, what are the issues that are facing them on the day-to-day that I can then help them solve?
No, I thought that was great. Everything Tamara was sharing. We're just kind of going through some of the things that we're identifying here in our own companies. I feel like we've maybe noticed some overlap, which is cool. I think we work at the same company. We're talking a little bit about growth. So I think that's been something we've talked about, just what we're investing in our people, kind of like the encouragement. It sounds like you do a great job of kind of fostering that mentality in your team.
Yeah, well, that whole discussion around meaningful work and then connecting that to meaningful culture, it's high impact. It's given some definition to some things probably for many of us. We've thought about it, but the research now is given support. The data is pretty compelling. Can't wait to hear the next round of data that's connected to things like bias. But recognizing possibility and nurturing potential is a big one that jumps out for my organization, as well as connecting individual work to higher purpose and being intentional about that every day. So great stuff, especially now in the great resignation, the period that we're all living in, trying to make our workplaces places that people want to stay, learn, and grow.
Excellent hearing from her. Would love to kind of sit down with her for 15 minutes, and I had a lot of things running through my mind. We started touching on technology and automation and robots. How does that fit in? What are the common traits of good leaders and like what are those life experiences and how do you foster that if there are people who haven't had those, if there are commonalities. So got me thinking about a lot of things, but that was an awesome 30 minutes there. Would love for it to continue. Yeah.
Thanks. Do you have any quick words, either of you, about what you just heard with Tamara?
Yeah, you got it.
I think the research she has been doing is fascinating, and definitely would love to, dive a little bit deeper into that research and kind of also follow the, the follow-up, part of her research. So.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, from 5 years ago, the very first one we ever did, literally all I wanted to do, Ted, was I wanted to get an amazing collection of humans in one space. And yes, I knew that at the heart of it was going to be this conversation around authentic leadership and culture, but I knew magical things would happen if you could there's power in congregating, and there's power in bringing people together in a space that are amazing people that bring their own expertise and their own minds and hearts to the table. So that literally that was all I wanted to do the very first year. Now to watch what it's grown into and continues to evolve into is amazing. Obviously, last year we couldn't gather in person. So it was disappointing that we couldn't be in the same space because of the pandemic. But thankfully, that what I heard back from a lot of people that had been at past events was, we need the event now more than ever. And so we went all virtual last year. And thankfully for technology and everything, it worked out great. And it created this platform for people to then still engage with each other and to step back and to get out of their pandemic mindset and get into this important stuff. And it was a really successful thing. And now here we are 1 year after that, now in 2021. And the reality is we have the ability to do both now. And so there's always going to be power in congregating and absolutely in person, and you can feel the energy in a room. And again, stand around a table, as I see all these people doing now, and talking and engaging with each other and sharing, what resonated with them and what's important for their company. But then also virtually, how amazing it is to have people literally all across the country and around the world that could be a part of this and still engaging in a engaging virtual meeting, not just a boring report out kind of meeting, but where you are actually engaged and you are contributing and interacting with everybody. So I'm glad that it continues to evolve.
I was always hopeful. I'm always excited when people want to come together to talk about culture and engagement, because it's so important, not even just for companies, but just in life, right? Your communities, your homes. And so being able to be a part of this panel, which was exceptional, and hearing from these leaders who do this work day in and day out, and also looking out to the audience and seeing that they're hungry for this, like they want to do better. They want to elevate their companies. They want to elevate themselves as leaders. It's so incredibly important. And I'm just very excited to be a part of it, and I want to keep the conversation going.
Has changed since the inception of Thermostat Culture Live ultimately helps me to realize the real value of what this day is, and really the wider audience that it needs to be reaching, because there are real solutions here against large problems. You'll hear Jason say it all the time. Whether or not we choose to, our culture will be shaped. And I think really getting into the Play-Doh of how we're going to shape it is where somebody can begin here in a day like this and bring to their organization some of the gold. I was just expressing to Jason in between discussions here that some of this stuff is just so incredibly valuable and it really helps mold and shape, how do we do in these great big organizations? How do we do it? Well, a lot of that stuff is done here in the sandbox, if you will. So great to be a part of it. Humbled by a lot of the great words here and such a value to bring back to my own organization. And really, I'd wish it on any others. So anybody listening, what a great value to invite your team leadership and to say, hey, here are some real ways that we can impact our culture and our people, all inside of one-day workshop and even virtually. What a value. So glad to be a part and to absorb over the years and the way that our culture has really demanded that we shape it better.
I chose the word stability, but one of my biggest takeaways from especially the last excerpt that just happened was that we can't be bystanders, right? Like, and the bystander effect is something that is entirely real, and that is something that, you know, we have to learn that we need to be keeping each other accountable in the moment, you know, and that's how we move forward together, and how we can have those open and honest conversations, though they are uncomfortable.
I like yours.
My word was bravery. And mainly, as I kept thinking of all the conversations that we've had, being brave enough to step forward and pay that compliment, say the thing that you wanted to and you missed your opportunity. An ability to praise, being brave enough to step out on that ledge and be that person that was willing to pay forth the praise, or, you know, those kind of different opportunities that we have through our day that we might miss.
My word was inspire, and it's really how I can bring the inspiration to the people that I work with, that they actually can make a difference.
My word's reciprocity, and it's an underlying theme that I keep picking up on throughout the day of investing in others, and the return on that investment is so much greater than what you put into it. Holding each other accountable, lighting a candle for each other to light up the room. It just seems to continue popping up throughout the conversation.
It's intentional. So just in the moments that we have, just being focused on where we are currently and not being scattered on what's coming next. But so when each person you're interacting with feels as though you gave 100% of yourself in the moment that you gave with them.
How you ask for something and then the opportunity just comes.
Okay, I said my word was courage. So being a recent college graduate, not really having any experience in the corporate world, it was very intimidating coming into it, especially during COVID. So going forward, I want to be able to put myself out there more and make that big leap to do things I probably wouldn't have done before.
Yeah. My word was variable speed, playing on Jason's HVAC thermostat. And I tend to move at one speed, and I know that's not good in an organization. You can't just be flooring it through every decision, and there's times where it makes sense to slow down a little bit, breathe, and think about the impact. And while there's still plenty of times you need to move quickly, you can have a bigger impact sometimes if you move a little more deliberately and slowly.
All right. I'll do a different, So after our last thing, I think the idea of people need to be part of the conversation, and we need to make sure that we have the right people and everybody in those conversations to really impact, things we want to move forward, ensuring what are things that need to change. But again, making sure we're getting all the people as being part of that conversation.
So the words that I chose were create certainty in an uncertain world. And one of the things when I talk to our customers about the difference our company brings to the projects that we build for them is not only are we technically incompetent builders, but we care more. We care like it's ours. We care like it's our money. We care like it's our material. And we're going to take care, and we're going to be great stewards for that. So it's just taking care to the next level.
Go. So one of the words I chose was adaptable. So I'm come from the sales background, and sometimes, you have to stop, think, and adapt, and things don't always go the way that you think they're going to go, and you need to, do your own thing to make it go with the flow and continue business as usual.
In escape.
I know. I did try, but here we are. So my word that I chose was pride. Just kind of acknowledging that everyone on the team should be proud of themselves and proud of the work that they do, and how a lot of the other, important things around culture will stem from that.
Yeah, it's much more impactful to get everybody in the room and start sharing experiences and having these types of conversations around a table. It's just not the same as it is on Zoom, and we're very happy to be here in person.
No, this is my second time coming to Thermostat Cultures Live and being a part of it. And I think, like Jason said, there's a time when we need to come together. There's a time where there's power in people. And so being able to have the power of people and to give us this kind of an energy to take through as we think through next year, and again what we're looking at in 2022. Again, there's just never been so much opportunity, and so I think it's a great time to get together. So
it has, this has been an amazing morning. Every year at Thermostat Cultures Live, I feel energized, not only by the content that we talk about, because obviously developing people and culture and recalibrating the thermostat and thinking about what we're even aiming for is so critical, and again, a practice we all ought to be doing, and it's just helpful for us, right? So the content itself is awesome, but the people in the room is what I also get so excited about. The caliber of people that are a part of this, the experience, the expertise of people in the room, and then a number of virtual participants. The same thing, not just literally in the room, but virtually out there. An amazingly engaged audience this morning that was just fantastic. So I get energized by this collection of humans all being together in the same spot. Again, either in person or virtually, is just powerful. And then, man, you think about the people that we've been lucky to hear from. So hopefully I did an adequate job of setting the stage for what is that temperature that you want to set as an individual leader. And then thinking about, having time and space to step back and think about the culture you're creating with your team, your organization, and all of that. But then to hear from Tamara Miles, a researcher about the 10 principles of meaningful culture. To hear her, these are things that you read these 10 principles that she came up with through the research of, studying exemplar organizations. You see these things, and she'll even admit to you, like, these are things that we all know. They're things that, that we're not really surprised by, that these would be the 10 principles of meaningful culture. But what is unique about it and special about it and revealing to us about it is that we might know these things, but unfortunately a lot of teams and organizations aren't great at practicing these things. And so there's tremendous opportunity. If we know that the research is telling us that 9 out of every 10 employees would take a pay cut to work for a more meaningful culture, then they are thirsty for wanting to be a part of a meaningful culture. And so there's tremendous opportunity for our places of work to create intentionally these kind of places of meaning and value. So to hear from her, to then have LaShondra Baker from National Church Residencies, Kevin Clayton from the Cleveland Cavs, Ken Boyer from EY, to have them, Lori Turner chimed in from Leadership for Educational Equity, Howard Behar, the former president of Starbucks, Shane Battier, 2-time NBA world champion, to have their voices adding into this from their perspective about not only the temperature they're trying to set in this coming year and that intentionality, but also giving their experience on teams and organizations that are proactively shaping culture and are strategically doing that. If that doesn't breathe oxygen into you, then I don't know what will, because their voices and more importantly, who they are as people and the spirit that they bring to it is really, really amazing. So as the host of the event, I'm always just grateful I'm super grateful that these kind of people are seeing value in this, wanting to contribute, and then the amazing companies and teams that make this a priority to be a part of, so that they can step back. They can recalibrate their own thermostat and think about, hey, in the coming, 12 months, what is that culture that we're going to intentionally create? Grateful and excited about everything that's happening today.
I think we talk a lot about providing feedback, and that's a really difficult thing to do, especially hard feedback. And so if you practice it, it may be tough this time, but you'll only get better at it every time you go through it. And if you kind of take a step back afterwards and talk about or think about what worked and what didn't work, and you kind of course correct for the next time, you're only going to get better at it.
He was talking about, if you're the best player, highest point scorer, you maybe make the most money, but the people for longevity are the people who can work together with a team, that can motivate a team, that have long-term success for the group that's working together for a bigger goal. And I think in a business world, that's important to remember too, because we're only as good as the people that we're working with, and rarely is it just one person, if ever, that is pushing things forward. So it's just to not lose sight of that.
And that to me goes back to servant leadership, which we kind of talked about at the beginning of the day, right? That even though you're the top head honcho of the company or whatever, that doesn't mean you have all the answers. That doesn't mean it takes a village to accomplish things. And so I think having that perspective of he may have had the most points, but he doesn't know what they were. He just knows that their team together performed well. And so I think that's a neat illustration of that.
I mean, my biggest thing with him is I love the fact that he's transitioned what he's learned on the court and in the locker room. That's why I asked the question of how you make athletes into leaders, because that education and that transference of coaching leadership is things that they all learned on the court, and his application for his foundation and the work that he does and the work with culture really kind of transcends that, and I think most organizations need to learn how to do that. So that's what I love about him.
I'm Brian Herschel, I work for UI. And I came in today knowing I'd have less experience, maybe less power on my organization than a lot of the people in this room. And I guess I internalized that and think, maybe that I don't have, I guess power's not the right word, but I came in thinking I don't have power to make a change as much as a lot of you guys do today. And I think just that personal accountability really sticks with me. And then tying it back to my word, I chose authenticity, and I think that's something that's important to me that I want to be able to foster. And just I feel like a lot of this, bringing in Shane, being intentional with that word, making sure I'm sticking with it, active. Sorry, I'm kind of losing my words here, but I guess it comes down to that, I guess I wasn't holding myself personally accountable for the culture of my team just because maybe, I viewed myself as lower in the totem pole, but I think it's fair to be intentional with what I want to see in my work environment.
Cool. That's awesome. We can. Yeah. Let's do a little pass the mic here. Let's get crazy.
So on the teaching side of things, I thought Howard Behar asked that $1 million question. So from where I sit, I may not have the appreciation for what it's like for any of the panelists to be in their skin. So tell me what it's like. What is it? We talk about these words inclusion, we talk about authenticity, but what does it look like? And then Kevin, of course, boom, 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 3 answers, and that for me triggered, there are any number of situations that I can think of. But my lingering piece, my teaching piece is to go back and be very intentional about helping people understand what we mean by inclusion and authenticity and an environment where people belong. When it happens, have the courage to say that's what it is. And also to say that's what it's not. And it takes courage sometimes to do both. But to define it, as you've said so many times today, it's got to be more than words and posters and things that CEOs sign. It's got to be something that becomes tangible. And we have to be able to define it and show it to people so they know what we mean.
Yeah, love it.
Yeah.
I just wanted to second that because for me, as a leader in the company, for both of what you just said, I need to provide that safe place for my middle managers to be able to realize that they have the power to implement the change and that it's their responsibility. So accountability as a professional development instead of something that's wrong. And then also with just inclusion and learning where we're coming from. My word was engagement. And so me building that safe place to have the conversations and engaging others to make them feel like they can be a participant in our whatever thermostat we set our culture to, then they can actually be held accountable for that participation. If I don't do that, then they don't feel like they have the power of change. So I just wanted to let you know that both of you were very validating in my world.
Love it. Yeah.
I leave here today with my cup full again. Not that it was empty, but it was good to see that you could fill it again. With my word is inspire. My cup full again of inspiration and aspiration that I can inspire others to keep creating joy and opportunity, which is what Wendy's is about, to create joy and opportunity. And the realization again that culture and people-first culture that we have been saying, but this just gave me again more strength. I feel like I'm living like superpower now. That we are on the right track. Don't lose the track, Elena. Just keep going. It's not easy. Not at all. I do sometimes come across as a dreamer. My colleague will tell you that. But you just gave me again that energy as, yeah, that's the right track. Just keep going. It's hard. Just barriers will kick. Somebody will help me. And I'll keep going. So thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Femi Adianji from EY. And the one thing that stuck out the most to me was the principle of making a strong first impression. Because I think about, as we are all, from an organization standpoint, trying to recruit talent, it starts with having that memorable onboarding experience, right? So for me, it's kind of trying to assess what my organization can kind of do better from an onboarding perspective. And also when I interact with a new team, right, trying to make that introductory connection point with them, and making sure it's one that will resonate with the team, so that they will be engaging and wanting to work and partner with me on whatever project or engagement we were on. So I thought that was a good thing to reflect upon.
Awesome, love it. Yeah, I love that idea. See, sometimes you just gotta leave space, right, Florian? Sure.
One of my biggest takeaways from today, I would have to say, is really thinking about what does add value, what does not add value. Is giving something purpose. I can assign my employees to do X, Y, Z and tasks or whatever, but does that add purpose or value to what it is that they're doing for that day or for their goals? So that is something that I think that will really stick with me and make me a better leader ultimately at the end of the day.
Culture shaping is not a drive-through experience. There is no magic button. There's no quick fix. No magic pill we can take. That's just not the way it works. And so we have to be willing to go on the journey. And we have to be willing then to go on the journey with our people, and then get really intentional about how are we not only keep creating that first impression, but then what is the lifespan of that relationship that we want. I've said to many of you, either personally or your companies or privately or whatever, that just like a marriage, my wife Amy and I, who will be celebrating 20 years here December 1st, by the way. Yeah, baby. The culture of our marriage is not over, right? Like, just because we've gotten this far, I think we've been all right. I'll check in later, see what's the Just because we've gotten this far doesn't mean that the culture of our marriage isn't still being created. In fact, it's being created moment by moment every single day by the way we think, act, and interact together. Every single day. So the question isn't, did we have a great culture? Which, fortunately, we have. But the question is, what do we want the culture to become? And so whatever that relationship is, and certainly you all thinking about that in the context of your lives, but also in the context that we've been talking about in terms of teams, in companies, in organizations, which all an organization is a collection of humans. But if we're going to do that, then that means we've got to be willing to go on the journey together. Which means that there is no quick fix. But it does mean that we've got to be intentional about what is our strategy for how we engage the minds and hearts of our people and continue to make progress across the lifespan of that relationship. Again, thanks for being a part of today, and I hope it gave you some good juice. Thank you to everyone who's on. Have a great weekend. Sure.
Thank you for listening to today's podcast, and I hope the messages and questions stimulate positive change along your path. As always, if these messages resonate with you and add value to your life, I hope you'll help amplify them throughout the world. Please rate, comment, and share on whatever podcast or social media platform you're using. And share this podcast with the people in your life or work who should be part of these conversations. That way, this spirit does, in fact, spread. If these messages or developing leaders and culture would be helpful to your organization, or you have a question or comment about this podcast, please contact us at jasonvbarger.com. And remember, we all are ambassadors for the culture we want to create in our life and work. We have to own the vision we want to be a part of. The future of leadership is you, is me, is us. Be a thermostat.